In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where countless species coexisted under the banner of the Galactic Union, peace was not merely a virtue, it was a mandate. The Union prided itself on its ability to mediate disputes, forge alliances, and prevent wars among its member species. Each species contributed something unique: the Crithans, with their brute strength and military dominance, the Seralith, masters of technological innovation, and the Silverians, whose unparalleled wisdom often guided the Union's decisions. Humanity, however, was different. The humans were new, an untested addition to the Union. They brought with them an idealism that other species found almost naive. Their delegates were calm, patient, and always ready to negotiate rather than fight. Their technology was functional but unremarkable. Their fleets were small, built for exploration, not war. To most of the galaxy, humans were peacekeepers, diplomats, a species that preferred words to weapons. And so, they became the subject of quiet ridicule. Always talking, never acting. One Crithan general sneered at a council meeting, his words drawing a ripple of laughter from other delegates. Crithans were infamous for their aggression, and they saw humanity's restraint as weakness. The Union had humored these insults for years, dismissing humanity's frustration with vague platitudes about unity and understanding. The Crithans, however, didn't stop at words. Humanity's colonies, scattered across the fringes of the Union's territory, were an easy target. The Crithans needed resources, they claimed, and human planets were abundant in them. Small raids began, ships disappearing, supply lines disrupted, settlements reporting strange activity on their borders. When humanity brought their concerns to the council, their pleas were met with indifference. "You are overreacting," the Crithans argued. "Our people were desperate." The Union, reluctant to confront one of its most powerful species, advised humanity to exercise patience and seek a peaceful resolution. The humans obeyed. They always did. But cracks were beginning to show. The Crithans saw no need to stop. Their raids became bolder, more violent. A peaceful agricultural colony was attacked, its fields burned, its people displaced. Survivors, desperate and broken, sent messages to Earth. "Why does the Union allow this?" they asked. The question echoed across human territories, spreading like wildfire through the hearts and minds of a species that had endured too much. At the next council meeting, humanity's representative stood before the assembly, his voice steady but tinged with anger. He recounted the atrocities committed by the Crithans, the lives lost, the homes destroyed. He demanded action, not just against the Crithans, but against the Union's complacency. The response was silence. Then, a Crithan delegate chuckled, his laughter cold and cutting. "Your people are soft," he said. "Perhaps you should learn to defend yourselves instead of begging others to do it for you." The council erupted in murmurs, some delegates nodding in agreement, others looking away uncomfortably. Humanity's representative stared at the Crithan, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and measured. "You don't see the storm until it's too late." The meeting ended, and humanity withdrew. Not just from the council chambers, but from everything. Diplomatic envoys were recalled. Communication lines went silent. The Union dismissed this as a temporary sulk, a species licking its wounds. They couldn't have been more wrong. For centuries, the Union had assumed that humanity's patience was infinite, that their kindness made them incapable of cruelty. But they failed to see the truth: patience is not weakness, and kindness is not the absence of anger. Even the kindest species has its limits. The Crithan warships appeared in orbit without warning, their silhouettes casting shadows over the lush agricultural colony of Daryan. For decades, humanity's fringe worlds had thrived, their fields feeding not just Earth's people but countless others across the Galactic Union. Daryan's farmers had always been proud of their role in this shared prosperity. That pride meant nothing when the Crithans descended. They claimed it was necessity, resource scarcity on their homeworld. They said they had no choice. But the devastation they left behind told a different story. Crops burned in massive infernos, turning the once green fields into wastelands. Entire families were torn from their homes, their screams swallowed by the roar of Krithan transports. A handful of survivors managed to send desperate messages before they were silenced. "They're taking everything," one voice pleaded. "Please, someone stop them." The Galactic Union's response arrived swiftly, but not in the way humanity had hoped. A formal statement was issued. The Krithans were to exercise restraint in their pursuit of resources. No sanctions, no reparations, not even a true acknowledgement of the atrocity. The Council's tone was almost dismissive, as if it were a minor inconvenience in the grand scheme of galactic politics. When humanity's representatives next appeared before the Union, they came not with anger but with resolve. Their appeal was calm, measured, and devastating in its clarity. They presented evidence, images of burning fields, testimonies from survivors. They spoke of the lives shattered, of the trust betrayed. They asked, not for vengeance, but for justice. The council chamber, filled with faceless delegates of 100 species, sat in silence as humanity pleaded for intervention. When the Krithan representative finally spoke, it was with the same mocking tone they had always used. "You misunderstand the nature of the galaxy," he said, leaning back as if bored. "We take what we need. If you cannot protect it, it was never truly yours." The room erupted in whispers, but no one spoke in humanity's defense. When the council chair finally called for order, the verdict was clear: no punitive action would be taken. Humanity was advised to fortify its borders and engage in dialogue with the Krithans. The human delegate stood motionless for a moment, then leaned forward into the microphone. His voice was soft, but his words carried weight. "Dialogue," he repeated, almost to himself. "You see a people who speak first and act last, and you mistake it for weakness." He paused, letting the room hang on his silence. Then, with a calmness that chilled the air, he added, "You don't see the storm until it's too late." Humanity left the chamber that day with nothing but the bitter taste of betrayal. Weeks passed. The Krithans grew bolder, sensing no resistance from the Union or humanity. Their ships targeted another colony, this time deeper within human territory. This was no raid, it was annihilation. Krithan fleets bombarded the settlement from orbit, their weapons tearing through defenses as though they were paper. Civilians fled to underground shelters, only to find no escape from the Krithans' relentless assault. When it was over, there were no survivors. News of the massacre spread faster than the Krithans could hide their actions. Images of the devastation flooded human networks: the scorched earth where a city once stood, the mangled remains of homes and lives, the faces of children who had dreamed of a future that would never come. The galaxy saw these images too, but the Union offered nothing more than muted condolences and calls for patience in the face of adversity. Humanity's reaction was not immediate. They did not issue statements or call for another council meeting. Instead, they withdrew. Their diplomats vanished from Union chambers, their trade routes grew quiet, and their colonies ceased sending updates to neighboring systems. To the rest of the galaxy, it seemed like humanity had finally accepted its place, silent and defeated. But beneath the surface, something had changed. The patience that once defined humanity had reached its limit. The kindness that had been their hallmark was now eclipsed by something far older, something primal. The galaxy mistook the silence for submission. They didn't understand that it was the calm before the storm. The galaxy watched with muted curiosity as humanity began to pull back from its colonies. Outposts on the edges of Union space were abandoned, their inhabitants relocated to fortified settlements closer to Earth. Supply routes, once open and predictable, became shadowed by secrecy. Entire regions of human-controlled space went dark, their communications silenced. To the outside observer, it looked like retreat, a species licking its wounds, resigning itself to its place on the galactic margins. But beneath this perceived withdrawal, humanity was moving with singular purpose. Cryptic signals began to leak from their secured channels, intercepted by alien listening posts. The messages were fragmented, their meanings shrouded in code, but they hinted at something unprecedented. Phrases like energy displacement calibration, subspace synchronization, and Biosynthetic integration were whispered among intelligence circles. Speculation grew. Was humanity building a weapon, a fleet, or perhaps even abandoning the galaxy altogether? The Crithans, ever arrogant, saw no reason for concern. Let them hide, one Crithan commander scoffed during a military briefing. They are prey. Prey runs. His words drew laughter, their confidence unshaken by the humans' apparent retreat. Months passed, and the galaxy turned its focus elsewhere. Until the first strike. A Crithan fleet patrolled the edges of human space, its warships imposing and laden with firepower. They moved without caution, confident in their superiority. Their mistake was assuming they were alone. Humanity's retaliation began without warning. The first Crithan warship experienced a sudden systems failure, its shields collapsing in an instant. Moments later, its engines detonated, leaving nothing but a silent explosion of debris. The crew of a nearby vessel scrambled to make sense of what had happened, only for their ship to meet the same fate. Within minutes, the entire fleet was plunged into chaos. Their communications were jammed, their navigation systems scrambled. Then came the attack. Human ships emerged from the void, not in overwhelming numbers but with precision. Sleek and unrecognizable, their vessels struck with surgical efficiency. Crithan defenses were rendered useless. Missiles detonated harmlessly in empty space, their trajectories redirected mid-flight. Human ships hacked into Crithan systems with terrifying ease, turning their weapons against each other. The Crithans, so used to brute force, were unprepared for an enemy that fought like this. There were no grand battles, no drawn-out skirmishes. Humanity's retaliation was calculated, methodical, and devastating. Within an hour, the fleet was gone, reduced to wreckage and silence. News of the attack spread like wildfire, reaching the Galactic Union within days. The Council, which had long dismissed humanity as a harmless anomaly, convened in an emergency session. Delegates from across the galaxy demanded answers. How had humanity, a species known for diplomacy and restraint, dismantled an entire Crithan fleet? How had they advanced so far in so little time? The Crithans were livid, their pride wounded as much as their forces. "This is an act of war," their representative roared. "They must be brought to heel." But the Union, for all its posturing, hesitated. The footage of humanity's strike painted a clear picture. This was no impulsive retaliation. This was strategy. Adaptation. Evolution. "They were not supposed to be capable of this," murmured one Silverian delegate, their voice tinged with unease. "How could a species so peaceful become this?" The answer, though unspoken, was clear. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, mistaking their patience for weakness and their kindness for complacency. They had pushed too far, and now they were witnessing the cost of their arrogance. For the first time in centuries, the Union faced a question it had never considered. Could they control humanity? Or had they created something they could no longer contain? The Crithan forces were prepared for retaliation, but not for the kind of war humanity waged. Crithan strongholds, fortresses designed to repel massive fleets, found themselves under attack by a different kind of enemy. Human ships appeared out of nowhere, striking with terrifying precision before disappearing into the void. Supply lines were severed with surgical accuracy, leaving entire Crithan armies stranded without reinforcements or resources. Humanity's weapons were unlike anything the Crithans had faced. Energy-based munitions bypassed shields, striking directly at the heart of their infrastructure. EMP bursts disabled entire fleets, leaving them defenseless as human drones dismantled their systems piece by piece. But it wasn't just the technology that unnerved the Crithans, it was the psychological warfare. Broadcasts began to flood Crithan communications during battles. Voices of human survivors recounted the horrors inflicted by the Crithans, their words raw and unfiltered. Images of burned colonies and massacred civilians were projected onto Crithan monitors, accompanied by chilling messages, *. "This is what you created. This is why we fight. *. The Crithan troops, so used to fighting enemies who met them head-on, were rattled. Fear seeped into their ranks, and commanders found it harder to maintain order. Humanity's strikes weren't just dismantling their forces, they were dismantling their morale. The Chthons, desperate and cornered, turned to the Galactic Union for help. But the Union had problems of its own. Humanity, once the Union's most dependable member, now refused to cooperate. The same species that had supplied the Union with food, medicine, and vital resources had severed all ties. The Union's economy, already strained by interspecies disputes, began to collapse. Panic spread across member worlds as shortages worsened. Suddenly, the Union remembered just how much they had relied on humanity. In their fear, the Union declared humanity a rogue species. They framed the retaliation against the Chthons as a threat to galactic stability, conveniently ignoring their own complicity in humanity's suffering. A formal resolution was passed, condemning humanity and authorizing peacekeeping actions to subdue them. But humanity was ready. Union ships attempting to breach human territory were met with overwhelming resistance. Their fleets, designed for show rather than war, were no match for humanity's precision tactics. Messages intercepted from human channels carried a grim warning, asterisk. We were never your prey. Do not make yourselves our enemy. Asterisk. While the Union struggled to comprehend humanity's strength, the Chthons faced their ultimate defeat. Humanity's campaign against their empire escalated, targeting not just their fleets but their entire infrastructure. Planetary defenses crumbled under relentless attacks, and supply depots were reduced to ash. One by one, Chthon colonies fell. The decisive blow came with the liberation of the Chthons' largest human-occupied colony, a planet that had been under their control for years. As human ships descended, their forces moved with precision, freeing the oppressed and dismantling the Chthon regime. The scenes that followed were unlike anything the galaxy had witnessed. Liberated humans stood side by side with their saviors, their faces reflecting a mix of relief and newfound strength. The Chthon Empire, once unshakable, was now a shattered remnant of its former self. And through it all, humanity's message to the galaxy was clear. They were no longer the peacekeepers, no longer the species content to be dismissed. They had risen, and they would not be ignored again. The war's end brought no celebrations from humanity. Their victories were hard-earned, and the cost had been steep. For every Chthon ship destroyed, every Union fleet turned away, there were scars left on humanity's colonies and people. But their resilience had carried them through, and now, the galaxy stood on the brink of a new era, one humanity would define. The Galactic Union was the first to reach out, though not from a position of strength. Their fleets were in disarray, their economies crumbling, and their political cohesion fractured. The loss of humanity's support, combined with the Union's failure to contain the Chthon threat, had exposed its fragility. Humbled and desperate, the Union called for negotiations. Humanity's terms were clear and unyielding. Reparations would be paid to every human colony affected by Chthon aggression, not in meaningless currency but in resources and labor to rebuild what was destroyed. The Union was to guarantee that no species, Chthon or otherwise, would ever again exploit or harm humanity under their watch. And most importantly, humanity demanded systemic change within the Union, a shift from complacency to accountability. The Union had little choice but to agree. They knew they were no longer dealing with the same humanity they had dismissed and mocked. The humans before them were tacticians, diplomats, and survivors, and their resolve left no room for negotiation. Meanwhile, a movement was growing across the galaxy. Disillusioned with the Union's failures, species once bound to its decrees began seeking alliances elsewhere. They found a willing partner in humanity. The same species that had once been seen as weak now inspired hope. Their coalition, built on principles of mutual respect and decisive action, drew in those who felt abandoned by the Union. Humanity didn't seek dominance through force. Their power lay in their ability to adapt and unify, to take what was broken and build something stronger. Under their guidance, the new coalition became a beacon for change. Member species marveled at humanity's transformation, learning from their resilience and ingenuity. What had once been the galaxy's youngest and most underestimated species was now its most influential. For the Chthons, there was no return to their former glory. Their empire was dismantled, their leaders exiled or imprisoned, and their worlds left to grapple with the consequences of their aggression. The name, human, became a haunting reminder of their hubris, a symbol of the cost of underestimating an opponent. As the dust settled, an alien chronicler recorded the events that had unfolded. They described the shift in the galaxy's balance, the fall of the Chthons, the Union's reformation, and the rise of humanity. Their words carried a mix of awe and caution. No species could forget the day humans snapped, the chronicler wrote. It was the day their patience gave way to resolve, their kindness turned into strength. The day they rose not as conquerors, but as survivors, architects of a new order. It was the day they reminded the galaxy of what it means to endure, and to rise stronger. Humanity's ascension was not marked by conquest but by transformation. They had taken their pain, their anger, and their loss and forged it into something unbreakable. And though the galaxy would never be the same, one truth remained clear: humanity had earned their place, not through fear or brute force, but through the undeniable power of their will.